for people.
Theatrics find impossible to understand. But understand or not, if you've been watching daytime television much recently, you can hardly have avoided seeing messages from BBC's Ceefax and ITV's Oracle updating you on programme information, news and weather. And when boring programmes are on, and provided you have the right equipment, you can enter into an entirely new world of computerised information to do with share prices, timetables and houses for sale. After a slow start, it's becoming more popular. The millionth set has just been sold, and some shops are now renting Teletext sets for the same price as ordinary ones. Richard Skinner reports.
For me, the advantage of Teletext was absolutely obvious, because being a presenter on Radio 1, I had to travel a lot around the United Kingdom and also work some pretty weird hours, either late nights or early mornings. Because of that, I miss a lot of the regular news broadcasts and travel information. Teletext gives me the chance to dial it up when I want it, and that makes a big difference. Now, I went out to rent Teletext, and I was quite prepared to discover that it was just a sort of fad, something a bit like a TV game that after a couple of weeks you lose interest in. But in fact, I discovered that it was rather habit-forming, that just like the ad for the TV Times, I never knew there was so much in it. I'll try and demonstrate it for you. This is the little box of tricks that actually allows me to dial up Teletext. There's BBC One entertaining us as always, and then we just turn on the text, which actually on page 167 there is showing a recipe, giving away what I did earlier today. Dial up 100, which is the actual index page, which shows me whether I want the news, city news, sport, whatever. Let's try for some news headlines. 101. Pretty quick, as you can see, some news there. Supposing we want some finance news, 120. The latest city news comes up, once again, very quickly. I don't often look at the FT index, to be honest. This is more my sort of thing, I must admit. Let me see, 176. The top 40, part of my job. BBC, of course, isn't the only network with a teletext service. The ITV version, if I can dial it up, losing that quickly, the ITV version is called Oracle. And there, once again, their index is on page 100, which will give us a pretty wide variety of things that they have on there. Again, the same sort of things on there, news headlines, business news, but they also have a regional service I'll talk about in just a moment. Let's go to Channel 4, where they have something quite different. Hang on, just try and go to Channel 4 anyway. Here we go. Now, the Channel 4 service has a thing called Foretel. Now, Foretel is a privately owned, separate company outside of Channel 4. Rather like Channel 4 have their own bought-in programmes, they've bought in Foretel. So if I dial up the Foretel index 421, you'll discover that they do a slightly different job. They see their job as complementary to the TV service, not to provide news. That's done by Oracle on Channel 3 on ITV. But Foretel will tell you the story behind the story. If I want to know more about Dick Van Dyke or Brookside, Foretel will give it to me. But back to ITV now, because as I said just now, they have a regional service which actually provides rather a fantastic service for me in London. Travel news, as we know, is now becoming maybe a mainstay of local radio transmissions. It's also a mainstay of local Oracle transmissions. In Scotland and in the southeast and in London, there are local Oracle transmissions, which will come round in a second when it gets to 312. London Area Report Travel News. Now, I think the important thing to realise is that although today teletext is very easily regarded as a novelty, a bit like the early days of colour telly, you remember when we all went down to Uncle Jim's to watch the news in colour, in a few years' time it really is going to be the norm, and its future is only limited by our own imagination and what we do with it. Now, teletext has been around for 10 years now, and amazingly, it all came out of the brain of one man.
Well, I was the first editorial person brought into Ceefax, and I operated in those days from sort of broom cupboard in Television Centre, and used to go down to Kingswood Warren, which is the BBC's research department, where all these magnificent boffins were working away on projects of 10, 15 years ahead. And one of the things, of course, they were working on was trying to get subtitles for the deaf. And that really is how teletext began, in the search for subtitling for the deaf.
What was the initial response that you discovered when you were actually trying to sell the idea to other people?
Well, I suppose a lot of people really did scoff. They said, oh, just as another engineer's solution looking for a problem. And there was certainly, you know, at the beginning we had sort of two viewers, and I used to ring them both up on the telephone and find out how they're getting on. But eventually, sets began to be made and it began to move.
Today, on the 7th floor of TV Centre, the Ceefax staff of 25 create 2 TV magazines. That's one on each BBC channel, with a total of 600 pages. Now, David Wilson, how do you decide actually what to fill those pages with?
Well, a lot of it's grown historically, as the whole magazines have grown over the past 10 years since teletext was invented. And we've thought of this and that and the other people before my time, and we have now recipes and sports and fun and games, as well as the news and road news and weather and things like that.
Of course, news is a very important part of the Ceefax service. And editorially, how do you gather all those news pages?
Well, you can see it all around you. I mean, there's the teleprinters over there with the agencies like in any other newsroom, and the BBC sources of supply, and then over there's the sports results coming in, and we have sound connections to the main broadcasting house newsroom from which we get BBC correspondents all over the world. Usual, just like a newspaper, really.
Of course, you differ from newspapers in one important factor, that there isn't actually a deadline in Ceefax, is there?
No, it's live broadcasting all the time. We don't have to wait for printing presses. We don't have to wait for bulletin times. We're the fastest news service, fastest news medium that there could possibly be. 30 seconds off the printers and onto the air.
30 seconds?
If they're working well, yes.
Do you feel that you're actually competing with newspapers or the other broadcast news?
No, we're a totally different medium. This is something entirely new, and what effects it'll have in the long term, I don't know, but then it might start affecting newspapers and other forms of broadcasting, too.
Which are the most popular pages out of all of them?
This is changing, actually, as the audience changes. We think now that probably the most popular are news, weather, BBC and ITV television programme listings, and sport.
ITV's Teletext service, Oracle, has two nerve centres. One's at the ITN headquarters in Wells Street, where all the news is gathered and put on your screen. But here in the heart of Soho is where the rest of Oracle is put together, the general features, also the traffic information that we saw on my screen at home. Now, Polly here has regular contact with people at the AA. They phone in at least once every hour with new information that updates the stuff that you can see on the screen right here. Now, hopefully, it did happen. The AA call was expected and it's come through. And within seconds, if there is any change, hopefully Polly will be able to get that information on the screen. Now, that's far quicker than any other form of travel information. I mean, if this was coming into the BBC now, for radio use, for instance, it would have to be typed out and run up at least 3 floors and then wait for a break between programmes before you could transmit it on the radio. For Polly, if there is a change, it'll happen right now. Here it is. And in a sense, this is the Oracle, the computer at the heart of the IBA's optional reception of announcements by coded line electronics. Without it, or its Ceefax equivalent, no teletext system could exist. As we've heard, teletext was actually invented in the first place due to a need to subtitle programs for the deaf and hard of hearing. Quite clearly, those subtitles were designed just for that audience and not for the rest of us. Now, Oracle and Ceefax are still well involved in doing this. Here at Oracle's headquarters in Soho, Guy Roaston here is working on the subtitling of a certain well-known soap opera. What he's done already is view the show, looking at the script, and entered that script in great detail into a computer floppy disk. He's then gone through the computer disk, positioning each subtitle as he wants it to appear on the screen. Top left, bottom right, whatever, changing the colours so that each character is readily identifiable. And over at the BBC, Ceefax is well involved in the future of subtitling for the deaf.
Yes, Ceefax is investing about £1 million in building up a big subtitling unit in Glasgow and increasing our subtitling unit here. We're doing about between 5 and 7 hours subtitling a week at the moment, and our eventual aim at the end of 5 years is to subtitle all major pre-recorded programmes.
Since the arrival of Channel 4, there's been a new development in the use of teletext. Fortel offers a service described as a complement to the art of viewing.
Fortel's different because it was set up in the first place by Channel 4 to act as a support service for the network's programmes. And the whole idea really is that Channel 4 viewers, if they have teletext sets, can get details, background information, synopses, film previews, all that sort of information from Fortel. So that's the basic difference. The other teletext services tend to offer news, sport, business, current affairs information. Fortel's brief is to act as a support service for Channel 4.
So as much as the TV Times gives TV schedules and background articles, you do the same thing?
Exactly, yes. And the advantage, as far as we're concerned, is if there are any late changes, any late billing changes, then we can get that information from the Channel 4 presentation department and simply key it in on one of these electronic display terminals that you see around here. And the viewer really gets a very quick service by using 4Tel and very up-to-date information on Channel 4 programs.
What about the interaction of the audience with you? Do you want your audience to get involved, to have a dialogue with you?
Absolutely, yes we do. We run a number of things on 4Tel, for instance our gallery page, where we invite people to design teletext graphics. I mean, we obviously know what teletext graphics can do, but we're trying to get that message over to people by getting the public themselves to design teletext graphic pages. And we've tried to make it possible for viewers to find their way around the magazine in a number of different ways. One of the obvious ways is that we use different coloured graphic headings for different sections in the magazine. The synopses will have yellow headings, the programmes will have blue headings, that sort of thing. And we do tend to spend an awful lot of our time in this office making sure that pages look good, because we're asking viewers to do something that they're not actually used to doing, which is reading their television sets, and you have to make it easy for them. I've always felt very strongly that really there should be more thought given to the way teletext is presented in the home.
So where does it go from here? Will Ceefax and Oracle still look the way they do today in 10, 15, 20 years' time?
I hope not. Goodness no. I mean, our big danger, I think, is probably complacency. We've reached a sort of plateau, our million sets, and the great danger is that everybody sits back and says, aren't we clever and wonderful? But, I mean, a million sets out of 20 million, we've got 19 million to go, and I think it's a time for lateral thinking. I think that this is the time when people have really got to come up with ideas. We've established it, but the ideas have got to come, and they've got to come from young people using it quite differently. The most exciting things, I think, are obviously things like telesoftware, putting computer programs into micros, regional development. I long for more regional development. We've been very slow there for some reason. And, of course, international exchanges. And as well, teletext should be part of video cassettes, video discs, satellites, cable, you name it. There's somewhere for teletext in everything.
Richard Skinner reporting on teletext. Well, next week the programmes we'll be reviewing are...
This Moulin X